In the year 2008, a great disaster struck the American people. Homes were lost, jobs, livelihoods placed into jeopardy, and that repugnant sense of economic hopelessness surrounding the United States was experienced for the second time since the Great Depression. This monumental concern in recent history manifested due to multiple factors, from the prominent advertising of poor investments to a murky, complex web of derivatives. It is here that we see an entire system cave in upon itself, destroying the lives of countless persons throughout a few mere years. It is this delicate notion of economic security on which we rely that is causation to the 2008 economic crisis. The crisis begins with a matter intended for financial gain: investing. Throughout the infancy of the 21st century, an emphasis of investment on U.S. mortgages begins. Incentivized by the marketing of loan agreements as a safe opportunity with a high reward potential, with mortgages, safe or not, being provided AAA ratings known as real estate derivatives. Larger banks began to fund mortgage-backed securities, which were then sold to investors. With the inevitable greed that ensued after the purchasing of countless mortgages, more housing opportunities were made available, even to those with a high likelihood to default on their loans. Homes would continue to increase in cost due to low interest, provided as an incentive for prospective borrowers in a scandal of predatory lending, wherein loans would increase in cost over time. In fact, homes would even be sold at amounts greater than their true value. This issue was exacerbated by the excessively lenient prerequisites for mortgages. Everything culminated in the widespread loss of homes and banks being shut down, others bailed out by the government, and the stock market crashing. Ultimately, with greed, dread was painted upon the faces of America that year. But greed was not the sole cause of the crisis. Rather, it was through one act of legislation that encouraged the onset of this new economic disaster. The law in question was the Gramm-Rudman Act. The act provided banks the power to trade mortgage-backed securities with investors, giving them the means to sell for profit, and, consequently, the means to gamble. The investors themselves were further persuaded to provide their finances by credit default swaps, which acted as insurance against loan defaults. The issue with credit default swaps manifested after the insurance was to be paid. The American International Group, AIG, as an example, was unable to pay out most of the insurance policies and filed for bankruptcy. This became a national issue. While the government did not initially act in favor of the American economy, it attempted to weaken the disaster that engrossed the United States. In total, the Federal Reserve and the United States paid over $1 trillion to relieve the nation of its economic disaster. The Troubled Asset Recovery Program, TARP, initially acted as a means to bail out banks, during which $657 billion were spent. Afterwards, the crisis was further reduced with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which provided the means for families to survive through unemployment, while also granting a large-scale reduction in taxes, costing approximately $831 billion. It was after these incredibly massive sums of money were distributed that the crisis was to end. That did not, however, strike the memories of 2008 through 2009 from those who suffered. How was your life affected by the 2008 economic crisis?
My life was affected significantly by the 2008 economic crisis. I had been in the log home and timber frame home manufacturing business and general contracting business for 33 years. And we were really a luxury product, and we saw spending just stop. And with the spending stopping, the volume of sales went down significantly, and ultimately the company that I was managing almost went out of business. And at that point I just said, hey, enough's enough. I retired, but my wife is in the log home industry as well. She ended up getting a different job, so basically we both lost our jobs because of that. We saw an awful lot of our employees, we had to lay them off. We had vendors that weren't getting paid on time because of that, and it happened so quickly. So my life was affected significantly from that downturn, and our whole industry, log home and timber frame home industry, was significantly affected. From the number of companies that there were in 2008 to now, I bet there's only 10% of the volume of manufacturers that there were in 2008. So
what did you see changing in the community as the crisis was ongoing?
Boy, in the community, it was really amazing. I saw an awful lot of people lose jobs. And I saw people having to get food stamps. I saw home valuations going down significantly. I saw people take certainly lower paying jobs that they could find when they lost higher paying jobs. I saw people having to try to get retrained in jobs as well. The community was affected significantly. There were an awful lot of businesses that suffered tremendously or even went out of business after that downturn. So yeah, it affected our whole community significantly.
How would you react if this happened again?
How would I react if this happened again? One of the things that I learned from that downturn in 2008 probably is how to be more prepared for it. So I don't think it would affect me nearly as much as it did the first time around. I've changed my business practices, my lifestyle, frankly, the type of work I do. So if it happened again, I think I would recognize it sooner, so be able to pull the reins in if that's what it required. Yeah, so I think really seeing the signs of a downturn, but also having a better understanding of the economic cycles that we're in. And right now being, kind of expecting some kind of a correction with a long-lasting boom. We see a correction coming up soon, and I know I'm personally well more prepared for it than I was in 2008.
Where do you see our economy going now?
Right now, I think it's still going to stay strong for probably another year and a half or so, maybe 2. But frankly, in the business that we're in, we coach contractors, we're seeing a bit of a slowdown. I see people starting to be conscious of a correction in the economy, and I'm seeing contractors reporting that people aren't willing to spend as much right now as they were even 6 months ago. So I think people are realizing we may be at the end of an economic boom, and they're preparing for it as well.
Do you have any other comments you'd like to make regarding the crisis?
It was an interesting crisis to go through, and it certainly was significant, not just for me, my industry, but really it was worldwide. But thinking about our North American economy, it suffered tremendously. And I just hope everybody realizes that, yeah, sure, there's political aspects of it, environmental aspects of it. It's really cyclical. It happens in nature. It happens in business. So try to look at being prepared for it, thinking about alternative ways to generate income, protect your family, maintain your lifestyle, have your savings, and not be nearly as significantly impacted as last time.
The value of the U.S. housing market decreased by $3.4 trillion. The stock market decreased by $7.4 trillion. The aggregate of $10.8 trillion is half of our nation's current national debt. 5.5 million people became unemployed due to the crisis. In fact, the unemployment rate was nearly at 10% 2 entire years after the crisis ended. It is clear that the 2008 economic crisis had a profound effect on the lives of Americans. The question now stands, where is our economy going currently? Are we to live in another putrid recession in the future? Or has this truly been the last monetary nightmare to which the U.S. has been subject?